Hello, viewers. My name is Tally Monto. Welcome to Native Nation. And today we are going to have a talk with Pam Bean, who's the Executive Director of Montana Fair Housing. A little bit about myself. I work for Native American Development Corporation under their TRIA program, which is a Native artist program to bring visibility for Native artists here in our state. We've selected housing as the topic of this show because April is the Fair Housing Month, so we want to bring awareness to that. And like I said, this is Pam Bean, the Executive Director for Montana Fair Housing, and I'll have her introduce herself and give a little bit about what you do, Pam.
I've been with Montana Fair Housing now for over 29 years. And when we talk about fair housing, we're referencing the non-discrimination laws. So we focus on protected class related issues. Under the laws, they're called protected classes. So the groups of folks identified in the Federal Fair Housing Act and the Montana Human Rights Act, based on those protected classes, they can't experience, shouldn't experience discrimination in housing. So we can do a lot of education and outreach, such as these events, especially during April, Fair Housing Month. We also do some dispute resolution, trying to resolve issues between parties before an enforcement action gets filed. And then we also do enforcement activities which investigates allegations, including those that are systemic, and non-systemic issues as well, and help people file complaints with the Human Rights Bureau or Department of Housing and Urban Development. And then we as an organization also file.
Okay, so let's go under the law. What are protected classes?
The protected classes are, under the Federal Fair Housing Act, are race, color, national origin, religion, sex, disability, and familial status, which is the presence of children in the household. Under the state law, our state law includes all the federally protected classes, but additionally includes marital status, age, and creed.
Oh, nice. Okay. So how did the Fair Housing Month come into play, and how was that kind of process of making April the month to bring awareness to that?
So when the law passed in 1968, right after the assassination of Martin Luther King, the following year, my understanding is, HUD deemed Fair Housing Month and has every year since celebrated it, and it's just grown, of course, as people became aware of it and organizations became aware.
Okay, so can you give us some information on what is housing discrimination? You know, if people feel like they're discriminated, kind of tell us the process of what channels they would go through with that as well.
Okay. So sometimes discrimination, folks aren't sure that what occurred was discriminatory. I spent about a half hour talking to a woman right before I came in here who actually, her allegations were based on being Native, and then also some disability related stuff come up. And so she's got a set of facts and occurrences that on the face of it might look like the housing provider just didn't like her personality-wise,
Yeah.
which happens. But the more I talked with her and pulled out different scenarios, the more I thought, you know, I think this might be. So at that point, we have to complete an investigation. And so I told her, you know, I'm in Billings. I'll be back in Butte tomorrow. Let me take a look at who owns the property, if there's been any other complaints or formal complaints filed. I look at the facts and where different experiences she described might fit into different violations of the act, and then call her back and I can have a more pointed discussion with her. But in the interim, when there's something that's not crystal clear discriminatory, we also have other staff that'll do things like testing and surveying properties and talking to witnesses.
So sorry to interrupt, but what is testing then? It's not a test on
Nope.
a written piece of paper.
No. Testing, I love testing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually how I started in fair housing. Well, first I was a tester and then came to work for fair housing as test coordinator. But what happens with testing is, like I said, oftentimes you don't know if it's discriminatory. This person might just be a jerk to everybody. We don't know.
Yeah.
And being a jerk, unfortunately, isn't illegal.
Yeah.
So when we do a test or a series of tests, we contact, in this instance I'm describing, the test coordinator would contact one of our volunteers who's native. Say, hey, could you do a test for me? Yep, sure. And that person does up a profile similar to the callers.
Mm-hmm.
And they go out, what's the rent, what's utilities, do you have a lease, do you have an application fee, all the things we would ask if we were looking for a rental.
Yeah.
We also do lending testing, insurance testing, starting to take a look at the appraisal market, anything that can affect someone's right to get the housing they're qualified for, the housing related product. So that tester goes out, gets that information, comes back, we debrief them, talk about what happened, get any documents they got, and then we send a white tester out to do the same thing, ask the same, you have lease, an application, application fee, etc. Come back and see if there is different treatment, different terms and conditions, that type of thing. Is there a difference between what happened to this native tester and what happened to this white tester? And could that be based on their race? And if we think it is, then we usually will run another set of tests or even 3 trying to pinpoint what's going on. But that's testing.
Oh, okay. Nice. I didn't know that. So then how would it be applicable to, let's say, the creed part of it, the religious part of it? So it would be the same process too?
Yeah, so under the federal law and under state, there's protections for religion, which mean you participate in an organized religion or you don't.
Yeah.
Creed is a strongly held belief system that I understand was adopted into our state law because natives didn't feel religion adequately represented their beliefs. And it doesn't have to always be based on native belief systems, but so it could be the same thing. We call a Catholic volunteer, have them go out as a tester, and then have somebody who's non-Catholic or maybe Jewish, whatever the issues and the allegations were.
Nice.
With natives, a lot of times what comes up off reservation is concerns about saging, smudging.
Oh, yeah.
And that being important to their belief systems, but also balancing that with the damage that we know smoke and fire can cause in units, and seeing if we can get something that'll work for all parties involved.
Just from experience, saging, smudging does not cause damage. I don't, and even in, I don't even think they're picked up on fire alarm detection either. Just I sage a lot in my own home, so I know
Yeah,
that.
and I
for
do
sure.
mine as well. My husband's part native, but I think it depends on how frequently someone does it, and whether they're burning, actually, flame versus the smoke.
Oh, got it.
So no expert, but I
did
have
not,
worked
yeah,
with folks on that.
I did not know that. I guess I didn't. I was very unaware that that could be discriminated against.
Well, and it's because again, depending on how often it's happening, how probably where. I've worked with some natives who did it like in the public and common areas of HOAs or apartment complexes, and they can obviously, the management and owners can obviously put the kibosh on that pretty quickly because it's public.
Oh, okay.
So we're, can talk about just within your own unit. Let's try it and see what happens. And if there's shared ventilation systems, that can be part of it. Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of metrics that
Yes.
play into
that
piece.
Well, in this, staff and I were talking this morning, if people knew how many pieces to a puzzle we sort out between conversations and sorting out facts, they'd be nicer to us.
Yeah, it's like a 5,000 piece puzzle versus a 500 piece puzzle. I understand. Okay, so after, let's say, a person experiences discrimination, you do the testing, and then where does it go from there if it is proven that they have been discriminated against?
Okay, so once we get the evidence all back in place, and if we believe,
so it's like taking the puzzle
that's right.
Again,
we have a big conference table, pile it together. Then I'll call the household and say, this is what we found. We believe discrimination occurred. We did, as part of the investigation, 2 tests where the management refused to even give Native persons materials, missed the appointment set up, whatever the case. And so if you're interested in filing a complaint, we think that with your experience and your facts, coupled with what we've got, this would be, good evidence, and will help you file a complaint. And they can choose to, whether it's HUD, HRB, whether they want to or they not. And oftentimes, if
Rebecca, what's HRB?
Oh, Human Rights Bureau.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
I'm from the non-housing arena.
Yes, I appreciate
I'm in the
that.
arts arena, so I don't know what that means.
I appreciate somebody going on the acronyms. So that's the state agency.
Okay.
So they can decide which way they want to go, and there's pros and cons to both. And oftentimes, if there's strong testing or other evidence, we will also file a complaint as an organization. We just actually did that. We filed 2 this month. So.
To me, that's kind of alarming. 2 in a month. I know that's probably, it's not. Who would have thought now in our day and age that to me, it's just eye-opening how this still happens,
Well, and I think, and to be clear, the 2 we filed weren't both based on race, okay? But I think there is much more discrimination that occurs that isn't reported.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, if folks believe something's discriminatory and they talk with HUD or the Human Rights Bureau directly or an attorney, they oftentimes lack evidence, so the complaint's not accepted or it's no caused, and they have the right to go straight to those entities. But if they come to us, potentially we're able to find information to support that their allegations or their feelings
Yeah.
about what occurred.
And gather the
Yep,
facts
yep,
and
yep.
the documentation to support
Yep.
those.
And if it's not discriminatory, or the evidence we pull together doesn't show discrimination, then it might be covered under landlord-tenant law or some other law,
Okay.
and they pursue it in the correct venue where it will hopefully be more successful.
Oh,
So there's,
nice.
you know, we're not just shutting them down.
Mm-hmm.
We're also saying, you know, it looks like this could be covered under X, and I would try calling XYZ resource, and you know, we can share what we got if you want us to.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
That-
so I mean, we're just awesome.
yeah, that's a good. To me, the validation,
Mhm.
you know, component, then also gathering, and then also being advocating
Mm-hmm.
for that and being a resource.
Hmm. Well, and if they file complaints, most folks that we assist in filing complaints, we go through the whole process with them.
Mhm.
We're
Oh.
helping them with data submission and
Mhm.
working with them on their interviews with HUD or the Human Rights Bureau, and then, you know, if there's a cause finding and we end up from there going into court, we can help coordinate with them to get legal counsel at that point. And you know, because I sometimes we'll both have the client and us with legal counsel, but oftentimes that goes into some conflicts at the time of settlement,
Yeah.
because they're interested, as they should be, in feeling whole.
Yeah.
You know, what's going to make them feel whole, and we're interested in policy change. You know,
Yes.
and training and that kind of thing.
To cut down on the
Yeah, to stop it
instances.
if we can stop it.
Yeah. Okay, so once it's reached the point to where it is a valid discriminatory allegation, and then you file, so then what's the next step? Once you file, do you automatically go to court, or what's that process like?
If we file, it's almost with Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is the federal agency that enforces non-discrimination laws, or the Human Rights Bureau, which is the state. At the time, once it's filed, because you send it in and then the agencies check it out to make sure it's meritorious and jurisdictional, and it signs a case number that can take up to 30 days with HUD. Then it's assigned to an investigator with that agency, and that person starts, you know, interviewing the victims and interviewing any witnesses, maybe our testers, that type of thing, right?
Yeah.
And then both agencies are mandated to try to conciliate the complaint. So our legislature and our federal Congress has said try to settle it before we go to court. Most settle in that period of time.
What would a settlement be, if you know?
Well, you know, it can depend.
Is it monetary,
It
or
can be
is
monetary. It can be, you know, it depends on what the household experienced. Sometimes the protected class for natives, there's potentially some cultural interests they might see. We want to see the site increase housing availability for natives.
Yeah.
You know, maybe natives that don't quite qualify. So, you know, it can be a wide range of things, but usually some monetary, which depends on, you know, they were denied this housing and they had to find housing that's $500 a month more. So for 12 months, they're paying them this $500 difference. And then we always, if we're filing, you know, crunch our costs out, ask for those. So it can be a lot of different things. And, you know, some of the discrimination is measured so individually as far as the harm.
Okay.
And it's really difficult sometimes because some people are like, you know, there is no amount of money this dude could ever pay me. to take away this feeling
Yeah.
that we were homeless for 4 months. We were
Humiliated.
yeah, right,
you know?
right. So a lot of times it's working with them on, here's what current case law says for similar facts, and because I can't tell them
Yeah.
what's going to fix this for them.
So it's more like on a case by case.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
basis.
definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
And then, so what are the repercussions for property managements or landlords who violate this act?
So with the conciliation, that's the consequences. If we end up not settling, they write a cause, they call it a cause finding, and issue a charge of discrimination. That's the point where we're headed to court.
Yeah.
And depends which venue, whether it's federal court, an administrative law judge, or with the state, there's a couple of different options. But penalties, so with HUD complaints, if the parties go before an administrative law judge, the administrative law judge can assess civil penalties in excess of over $20,000 to reimburse the government for having to take this case that far.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just civil penalties. That's not the attorney's fees that the individual is faced with. They can have to pay those. They can have to pay punitives. We're punishing you for this behavior. Compensatory damages. So it's and then what we call public interest provisions, which is the training, change of policies. I want them to have a domestic violence policy.
Oh.
That type of thing.
Wow, I guess I didn't know all of that.
It's pretty broad.
It is. And then are there very many cases that kind of reach that level to where it goes to litigation or court?
No, not coming within our agency. Usually they conciliate somewhere in the agency, HUD or HRB agency process. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we get them resolved before it's even filed, because I think once it's filed, people are seeing more of a reality check of where this could go given the evidence provided. So they make decisions based on that. We end up in court every couple of years.
Oh, wow.
So it's not a lot, and I'm glad because it's very stressful and very expensive.
Yeah. So there's a lot of cases that are settled in that conciliation.
By far the majority.
Oh, okay. So are there any we talk about the federal level, but right now in the state of Montana, are there any legislative acts that are coming up that kind of relate to the fair housing that your organization helps with?
We don't really get involved in any lobbying. We serve as a source for information for legislatures and for folks who do lobby or testify much more frequently. But there's a lot of things taking place with the LGBTQ plus population. That is a protected class under sex in the federal law. And I think that some of that action could be, if it all passes and is implemented, could be very hurtful. Also reminds me that discrimination against that population is probably huge.
So what if there's and this brings to mind, what if there's a conflict between, the state makes a law that is in direct conflict with the federal law that protects these protected populations? How does your organization play into that?
If the state's saying, you know, this is legal behavior, we can discriminate against LGBTQ plus, you know, whatever the conflict is. Federal law still prohibits it, so we would just file the complaints with the federal office of HUD or go into federal court.
Okay.
So there's still avenues to address it, which is one of the things I do try to remind legislators, landlords, whoever I'm talking with, is you can make this change at the state level, but it's not going to stop us or anybody else from doing this work and filing at the federal level. The other thing the legislature is doing is trying to address some of the confusion around assistance animals for folks with disabilities. And they're putting things, or had attempted to put things into the landlord-tenant law that was already in the non-discrimination law or guidances or case law. And so that is one I sent a letter to folks in the legislature on, going, you know, I think it'll be even more confusing if you add yet another law that deals with discrimination against people with assistance animals. You know, let's try to keep it all focused in this law. If we're going to make changes, let's do it here, all the while remembering at the federal level what we do here isn't going to have an impact.
Oh, okay. Nice. So, kind of backing up to the protected classes, the housing discrimination is not only limited to protected classes. What are kind of some of the other areas that are deemed discriminative when it comes to housing?
So, from when the laws first passed, there was expansion and interpretation. So when sex was added in 1974, since that time there's protections for domestic violence victims, prohibitions against sexual harassment, protections for gender identity and sexual orientation. So the case law, as we grow in society, can tweak things to provide protections.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Our time is kind of winding down. That went really fast.
It did.
Very interesting topic.
Thank you.
You know, I didn't know. I'm a new resident to Montana, so you know, this kind of puts it in perspective for me and the Native community as well. You know, I feel more knowledgeable having this interview with you. So thank you all for viewing in on Native Nation here, and thank you, Pam, for all your knowledge. And her organization, again, she's executive director for the Montana Fair Housing, and April is the Fair Housing Awareness Month. So, you know, a great resource. If you experience any, you feel like you are a protected class under the law, and you feel that you have been discriminated against, definitely give her organization a call, and they can help you with the processes and all that entails to help advocate for you. So thank you so much.